Emil Salim, thank you for talking with us this morning. You have served the country in several important capacities. I would like very much to hear about your days in the 1940s when you were inspired to fight for the country's independence.
Well, first, why to fight? Why to join the freedoms movement? I was in a Dutch school and together with Dutch, but that was a privilege for me to be in a Dutch school. So I have my Dutch friends. We were in elementary school, young, we play together, we fight together and so on. But after playing, when you enter a clubhouse, then suddenly all my white-collar people are free to enter, but I myself could not. And when I asked why, I said, these are my friends. But they said, you are brown, your color. And I said, what's wrong with my color? I said, well, you're not white. So then suddenly I noticed that I'm not equal to the white people. So I cannot enter the clubhouse, could not drink together. You can play together outside, but you cannot enter inside the clubhouse. So there I realized there's something different between me and the white people. So I asked my father, what is wrong? Why am I not allowed to enter a clubhouse? He said, because we are not Indonesians. Indonesia was not known at that time. I'm talking about 36, 37, 1937, 38. You are nobody. You don't have a country. You don't have a nation. You are nobody. You are an inlander. It's called son of the land, but not own the land. So because you are brown, your color is brown. There I feel injustice. But then my father told me that your color must be brown, but your brain power is not. So show in the class that in spite of your color of your skin, that you are smarter than the others. That pushed me very hard to become a kind of a champion in the class. Then I pushed writing article, and when one was chosen, so when it was read before the class, and then my name was mentioned, then I feel, look, I'm brown, but not my brain. So when the independence broke out, you feel relieved. Now I'm somebody, from nobody to become somebody. And so it was finding your identity. You are somebody in the world. You are not a second-class citizen. And that drove me to spirit of the fighting spirit. So when the war was over and we were in independence and Sukarno returned to Jakarta in 1950, so by 51 I graduated from high school. And the first thing I did is go to economic faculty. When I then graduated from the faculty, and I was assistant to Professor Sumitro, when I was chosen to be elected have the chance to get a scholarship from Ford Foundation to study in Berkeley. I grabbed it and agree with that. It's called Indonesianization program by Sumitro. And the head of this group was Wijoyo. And every Friday, every Saturday, we have a discussion. We are 10 of us, the Berkeley students. There is Aliwadana, Sumanlin, and so on. And the discussion is like this. Suppose we have a chance to build the country. How will you build? What will you do in building the country? How do you plan the development of Indonesia? So you have already a kind of a dream developed in the Berkeley period at the time. And strangely enough, later, when we returned, when we were teaching, and a new order came, then we were teaching, the five of us, at the army school. Wijoyo, Sadli, Subroto, Aliwadana, myself. After the teaching, in the evening, you have done dinner together with this big army leaders, generals, colonels, and so on. After dinner, discussion is important. So it's free. Suharto, the head of the school, Sasquatch, is called. In this building, I'm the boss, and I assure you there is no censorship. So you're free to talk. There's nothing that will record you. You're free to talk anything. So the army people asked questions. They asked very sharp questions, questions that was never raised outside in the public because it was very difficult, sensitive. Straight answer. How is the country now? What is your assessment? Are we on the right track? Are we going in the right direction? How will Indonesia be 20 years from now? What is wrong? Where is the difficulties? If we follow the course of action right now, what will Indonesia be for the next 15, 20 years? And that reminds us to the discussion in Berkeley. The difference is when we were in Berkeley, you discuss theoretically, based on your readings and so on, theoretically. But when you are in the army school, you have to take into account the theory with the condition as it exists. They bring in the today's reality, and we brought to them the future orientation. There, somehow it meets. And in the future, our main theme is we must put the economic house in order first. And somehow, through this squad, Suharto invited us. Suharto came in Bandung, and we were invited to see him personally. So we met him, and there we find out that many things that we proposes, he agrees. He agrees, and on this quiet way. But we also know is that he is a man of practical man, and man very rational, sharp, fast. His perception ability is very sharp, very fast. And then he asked to assist him as Ketua Presidium.
So you had to focus on economics?
Yeah, we had to focus on economics. Wijoyo was economic affairs, assisting Sujono Mardani. And we were under Sujono Mardani.
He's a FINEC guy. He's always finance and economy.
He's a good friend of Suharto. He's very close. But important is, he doesn't understand economics. We were able to push him aside, and so that Wijoyo could go straight. So the key is to show to the president that, look, we know more than him, to show in a way the language of economics that he doesn't understand. Direct access is very important. If you have fear, it's very difficult. And Sujono becomes a sideline. And Wijoyo becomes the ear of the president.
Right.
Got the ear of the president.
And personally, Suharto likes
Wijoyo.
Very Javanese style to approach him.
Yeah.
Unlike Pak Emil, who is non-Javanese.
I've learned my lesson at the time. We had a meeting, so the five of us with Wijoyo, and then came the idea of how to overcome the crisis of rice. But then came the idea from one of the officers of the army to have an artificial rice. I smelled something. This is not right. To build a country based on an artificial rice with so many people, and so with this sophisticated equipment. I was at the time very young, very naive. I jumped, I said, it's nonsense. This is not right, Mr. President.
In front of Suharto?
In front of Suharto. Like a Sumatran, this is not right, this is cheating. And let's go back to normal. Rice production through rice production. Have a firm rice production program, and not this nonsense along that line. Everybody was shocked, of course.
The room was quiet? The room was quiet after you spoke? Nobody said anything?
No, nobody was quiet. And Suharto was so quiet. So anyhow, the meeting to sing over. And the decision was not taken. Usually in Indonesia, when the decision is not taken and sing over, it means rejected. So I was happy. But outside, Wijoyo told me, Suharto is a Javanese. Yes, I say. So I was then told by Wijoyo that the way of talking is how to get things through without hurting feelings. There is this style, so stick to your principle, but the way you express it is very important, so that you don't, because of the way you express is controversial, that the good ideas being rejected. So how to build,
package
it in the right way. Okay, since then, I've learned my lessons and so to become a Javanese. But also important is, Suharto knew that I'm not a Javanese. The others are Javanese. So sometimes when we are discussing and it becomes intimate, they speak Javanese. I don't understand. Then Suharto realized, and then he apologized. But every time when I meet him officially as a minister, after our talk, then he asked me to drink and so on. And then he gave me lectures on the Javanese culture. You know, the principle of menang tanpa ngasorake, this victory without defeating, enrichment without materialism, rich without material, and these kind of Javanese. He gave me a book, the Butir-Butir Budaya Java, and so. So every time when I come there after official, the business is over, then we talk. We talk Javanese. He teach me the Javanese culture, which is fortunate because then I knew what is his weak side, what is his strong side. So how to come into his point then. And that was helpful because after my becoming transportation minister, suddenly I was, and there was change in cabinet, I was invited to be early in the morning with him on a boat trip. We took a boat trip in the harbor of Tanjung Priok, the dirty, and the Ciliwung, Mount of Ciliwung, polluted, very polluted. So we went there, the two of us, and so he showed me, look, he said, it's very dirty. Yes, it's very dirty. I didn't understand why he took me there. It was early in the morning. And then he said, and just, it was 1978. So we have just started 10 years development, 68, 78. And now it's that dirty like this. Can you imagine what happened in the year 2000? If we go on like this, how will Tanjung Priok looks? How will this river looks? He was very excited. And suddenly he said, we must avoid this. Yes, Mr. President. That's why I asked you to become Minister of Environment. I was shocked. I said, me? See, I'm an economist then. I don't know about ecology. Honestly, Mr. President, Paharto, I call him Paharto. He said, well, economy and ecology have the same. Economy is the household of human beings.
Right.
Ecology, household of nature. It's household. You know household human beings. Now household of nature. Get this, economy, ecology, merge it into one. Ecology, economy, he said. Second, how can we have developed without creating dirt? Pembangunan tanpa merusak. Development without destroying.
Right.
So that by the year 2000, we must not get like this, he said. So, good luck, he said. Congratulations, good luck. So I was really shocked. My God, I said, what is environment? Anyhow, he trusted me. But why is this meeting important? Because I've confessed to him that I don't understand ecology. Because later, when I faced a crisis, a conflict, because one of company want to develop a cement factory in a Karts mountain in Gombong. And Karts is a kind of a sponge for rainfall, so that it develops water underneath, so groundwater river.
Right.
So it is very important. But the Karts is also have the ingredients for cement.
So they'll take that, they'll be removing that mountain.
So mountain to build a cement factory in Gombong. And it was endorsed by a family. So I went to him. I said, Mr. President, there is this Karts. Well, this Karts is a sponge that absorbs rainfall, and therefore there's a lake under it. Yes, I know, he said. And then there's underground river to Gunung Kidul. Yes, he knows that also. And Gunung Kidul is very dirt and dry that needs groundwater. Yes, he said. And therefore, it's important. Yes, he said. So, not knowing
what
I want to do. Well, Mr. President Suharto, but I have a problem. What? People want to build a cement factory over there. Who? I said, it's impossible. He said, but that is it. And I brought the document signed by one of his family. So, but there's this, Mr. President. He looks to it, he said, tell her that I don't want, that I reject this. Tell you that it's my order. That's not Eshar, Chibrer, Tom. So it's rejected.
Stopped.
So I came to this member of his family, told him, Suharto asked me to inform you that it's impossible. Well, the answer I got was very interesting. I thought I was helping development of having investment in there. But if it is against environment, please follow. He called me Om, Uncle, follow this. We don't want to be, that you will be in jeopardy, so forth. So that friendship, that kind of friendship is built and between environment and development. So anytime I have a difficulty, I always remind him, I don't know environment, I've warned you, but now I have this problem, I need you, something like that. And that was most helpful in conflicts that I faced with those against environment.
But leadership, or good leadership, also entails listening to good advice.
Yeah.
But at some point, Suharto stopped listening to the Berkeley Mafia or to good advice.
Why? I noticed at that time the children becomes
Powerful.
grown up.
Right.
One soft point with Suharto is his children. He loves his children very much. Tommy, for instance, is one of his darlings. Why? Tommy liked to race in a race boat, race car. He has an accident. He broke his, so he has here and something here. And it was broken such that you can see the brain.
Oh, wow.
He was brought in a hospital. The doctor gives up that they give up, it's impossible to
save. Huh?
Yeah. But here I see the power of faith of Suharto and Ibu. So he asked to be left alone with him, with Tommy, in a room, and the Pertamina apa itu, rumah sakit, RSPAD,
Yeah.
rumah sakit itu.
The hospital, the Pertamina.
Hospital. There, later I'm told, they were praying to Samadhi, the two of them only. And later I'm told that Tommy felt he was walking to a dark room. Suddenly he hears the voice of his father, of his parents.
Calling him.
So he returned, and that was the possibility
That
for
he
getting
returned.
him to be back again,
I see.
relieved. But imagine a parent that see your child dying and suddenly living again. How is the relationship of intensive love?
And that's why he gave Tommy a lot of concessions.
Yeah.
You know, the Mobile Nacional,
Yeah.
you know, the cloth business, and it created a lot of resentment.
Yeah.
And the economists, economic ministers, people who were his close advisors could not say anything to dissuade Suharto from doing these sort of unfair practices.
The leader becomes long and too much in power, and everybody knows that his future, the future of you, is very dependent on him, and he becomes a leader that is powerful
And
for
more
quite a long
powerful.
time, more power. Then you have the inclination just to give in whatever is being asked. So the intention, the need to be against will be very weak.
Would be more difficult.
Very difficult, because you know that next year he still becomes in power. 5 years from now he will
He's
be
still
in
in
power,
power.
and so on.
Right.
He has been in power for 30 years.
Right.
So you build an apparatus which is an yes man apparatus.
But in your overall assessment of Suharto as a leader, how do you describe him?
One is a firm leader. He called always of maintenance of the objective. Once he said, I want X, all of us must focus on X, and he does not deviate from it. One is the connection between Sabang, Merauke, Indonesia. We must create one nation in order that I, as president in Jakarta, can communicate with Sabang and Merauke with Jakarta to assure one nation. So we build a satellite that transform the communication links that can communicate Sabang and Merauke. With the risk involved, like this satellite, the risk is there. Nobody is doing that except Canada and the United States. Even if we don't have the technology, so we have to borrow the technology, and if it is costly, it's still his decision with the risk. It may fail because something will happen in the end. There's no experience, there's no knowledge. Yet he's firm. Maintenance of the objective.
In his later years, did you get disillusioned with his leadership?
No, I see like this actually. After 30 years, a new generation grew up, a new time, a new era, and the new era demanded a new, different leadership. So he does not fit in this new time horizon. 30 years is very long, from 70s, from 68 till 98. 30 years is too long. So a generation change. I myself don't understand the young generation anymore. So I feel that the time has actually come in 93. In 93, so I was helping him 68 till 93, is 25 years. So 25 years together with Suharto, we have a close relationship. He calls me and said, this time I'm not asking you in the next cabinet. Frankly speaking, I was relieved. After so many years, in 78 and 93, 15 years in environment, you become dull, you become, already, your whole energy is already squeezed. You, in your imagination, your creative power becomes already squeezed.
No stimulation?
No, you don't have new ideas anymore. You think as usual, business as usual. So I frankly was relieved. Mr. President, saying, I'm very relieved that I'm not, because I've been helping you for 25 years, and it becomes a routine, and the routine is becomes dull. You don't have creativity. You feel something new, and any challenge that you face, you don't know anymore how to face. And the new challenges comes up that you are not equipped because you are trained in the previous challenges. And so as I was speaking about myself, so he quietly said, yes, in a way I feel the same. He said, oh my God, I said, and he said, Ibu have already asked me also to resign. I'm already too long, you 25 years and I'm 60, so we've been too long here.
But don't you feel when people are in power too long, it's harder for them to relinquish power?
Yeah.
They don't know how or when to stop?
No, it's the environment. You see, so when we talk like this, there's a difference. Yes, I also want to leave. I think Ibu, he says, wife also want him to leave. I won't say that. So I was also member of the top of the Golkar top. There is the Dewan Pertimbangan, this is the executive, and you have the board where the ministers are there, and he is the chairing. So we have this meeting there. And he was telling in the meeting, I think the time has come that also I resign, he said. In that meeting, in 1993, and this priest prepare, in a way he was asking, who do we think could be then the next, and so on. He was asking then the leadership, Harmoko was the chairman, to then find out. Harmoko raised his hand, he said, before the decision is taken that he withdraw, can we give him an opportunity to have a survey on how is the public feeling, reaction? He said, okay, he said, all right? 6 months later, we have another meeting to listen to the survey result. And the survey result said that 86% was against him to resign and want him to continue. So, Mr. President, from the Golkar point of view, it's not wise if you withdraw, retreat. So you must, in a way, it's expected that he continue. So what is my point? My point is the surroundings, the political leaders around him, the family, the business leaders, all are pushing him to go on. But I feel, personally, he himself feel the time has come to stop. Why does the political leaders and the business leaders and the family want to push him around? Because they have an interest in him. Harmoko is still chairman because of him. Without him, he's nothing. The business people around him, Bob Hassan and so on, because of him.
And my final question for you is, how about new Indonesia under Jokowi? Do you need a powerful leader like Suharto again?
We have past phases of leadership, which I think Indonesia needs. So you need a strong leader like Suharto during that period. But after that period, especially in the 2000s, you need a different type of leader. SPY was a leader for the transition, from the transition of the Suharto period to the new one, to the democratic one. But filling the democracy, I think Jokowi is the right time. And I'm hopefully that he can bring, because he is democratic, he is from the bottom, and he's smart, yeah? And he's not corrupt, and that's the key. And he has no links with the big business,
power or
big business.
Right.
So these are the criteria for a right leader for Indonesia in the future. And I hope that he will stay that way. I hope that the business could not, the mafia groups could not control him.
Okay. Thank you very much, Emil. It was
Thank you.
very good interview with you.